Hi guys, Olive here. Happy 4th of July to those of you who, like myself, live in the United States. In this video, I'd like to talk to you about what I read in June of 2016 and what I'm planning to read for July of 2016. I won't bore you with a long, complicated story of how busy I've been, but I have been. I did start a full-time job this month, which has a pretty steep learning curve, so I've been dedicating a lot of my time and energy to that. I didn't read a lot, but I did read a little bit. And I'm in the middle of about 10 different books, which I'm not going to waste time talking about because it would take up the entirety of this video. So we'll see what I get to in the month of July. Whatever I end up finishing, I will talk about in my next wrap up. But I do want to talk to you about the books that I did read in June because I really enjoyed my reading in June. The first book I finished was an audiobook that I ended up loving called The Soul of an Octopus, A Surprising Exploration into the Wonder of Consciousness by Sy Montgomery. The audiobook was narrated by Sy Montgomery herself, and it was just a wonderful experience to listen to on audio. Sy Montgomery's enthusiasm about meeting the different octopuses, and it is octopuses, not octopi, something I learned in the book. Her enthusiasm for them really radiated through her voice. I'm really glad that she narrated the book herself, or else I just don't think it would have been the same. So this is a nonfiction book that talks about Sy Montgomery's own experiences going to aquariums, diving to find octopuses, and it also talks about the science of an octopus, but then it also has this entire conversation about consciousness and what it means to be a living creature and the connections that we have with each other as people, the connections that we have with other living things. It was so beautiful and so beautifully done because it's not a whole lot of science coming at you at once or a whole lot of philosophical or emotional things coming at you at once. Everything is interwoven in a very thoughtful way. So far in my life, through all the nonfiction reading I have done, some of it has made me feel very intensely, made me feel very emotional. H is for Hawk is definitely one of those. All the Russian history books, obviously, I read have devastating aspects to them. But this is the first nonfiction book that's ever straight up made me cry before. And I don't mean bawl, it just really touched me. Sy Montgomery meets with other people who are interacting with whatever octopus they're interacting with at the time. Each person has their own connection with the octopus. And obviously each person has whatever is going on in their life going on with them, and sometimes it's really difficult. And the interactions with the octopus speak to all of them in different, but then at the core of it, the very same way. All I know is that this book was just absolutely beautiful. I'm really glad I own this one on Audible because this is definitely one I want to give a listen to again. It's very short and I listen to audiobooks on double speed, so it took me no time to get through at all. Probably one of my top books of the year. I just can't speak highly enough about it. If you are kind of a nonfiction neophyte and want to read something about science and nature, but something also really beautiful, something that maybe will inspire you to get into nonfiction more, try this one. The next book was a reread, and I had really wanted to reread at least one book this year, so I've achieved that goal, and I definitely want to reread others because this was a really great experience. But I decided to reread one of my all-time favorite books, The Rules of Civility by Amor Towles. When I first read this book 3 years ago, I was really surprised that I liked it so much because I tend to be very hype-averse. I think there might still be some rebellious teenage streaks still lingering within me because if everybody else is into something, I turn into like hipster Ariel and I want nothing to do with it. Until the hype dies down, that is. If it interests me, then eventually I will get to it. I wish I weren't like that, but I kind of am. I read this book in the summer of 2013, about 2 years after it was popular, and I picked it up as an audiobook for a road trip I was going to be taking. The audiobook version is narrated by Rebecca Loman, who's an actress, and she just does a fabulous job with this. I ended up listening to the audiobook version of this one again. It's hard to describe this book really, but the very essentials of it is that it takes place pretty much over the course of the calendar year in 1938, I believe it is. Two young girls, Eve Ross and Katie Content, go into a jazz club and meet a young man named Tinker Gray. And then the entire rest of the book is how their lives intertwine with each other. It's really the only way I can describe it without getting spoilery. The cover makes it seem kind of chick litty, and I know that's how they marketed this, which is probably the reason why it became so popular. I have no problem with chick lit, it's just not normally something that appeals to me. I'm really glad that this book did become a bestseller because I think it asks some really important questions and has some really deep themes. And I'm glad that it got into the hands of more people because it is just a fabulous book. This book has the type of writing that I like, in that it's beautiful and it can take your breath away, but not because it's necessarily lyrical. It's very clean and sharp, it cuts to the point, but it does so in such a way that it just makes you feel exactly what the characters are feeling. The book takes place in New York City. You really feel the time period and the location singing through. And there are certain elements at the core of this book that really take inspiration from Thoreau, Walden, and living simply versus wanting a life of luxury, appreciating the small things versus wanting luxurious things. It speaks a lot to American materialism and the idea of the American dream, which are things that I think about quite a lot in my everyday life. I love the characters in this book so much. It is always so hard for me to walk away from the experience of reading or listening to this book because I am so attached to them by the end of it, which does not happen in every book for me. It was so delightful going through this book again. I loved it just as much, if not more than the first time I read it, which is awesome. And the last book I finished in June, which I just realized all three are audiobooks, is Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, of course by J.K. Rowling. I am sure you know by now I read this for my series, A Grown Woman Reads Harry Potter. I have not yet done the full video for this, but it will be the next video that I post, so keep an eye out for that. Once it's posted, I'll put the link down below if you want to check it out. And then, like I said, I am seriously in the middle of about 10 different books right now. For some reason, I just haven't been able to finish anything in physical form, but I am working on it. The audiobook I'm listening to right now, I'm pretty confident I'm going to get through, so I'm comfortable talking about that one. It's A Gathering of Shadows by V.E. Schwab. I was on the holds list for this audiobook for forever, so I just started listening to it, and I'm really excited to be back in this world. Lila Bard is a fantastic character. I'm really glad we're going to get to see more from her. I've heard that the ending of this one is absolutely devastating, and I'm sure will have me itching for the third book to come out, which I don't think happens until next year, so here's to torturing myself. And then there's all the books I want to read in July. I have no idea which ones I'm going to get to, and then I know the Booktubeathon is happening in later July. And I'm hoping to take part in that, so we'll just see. But these are the books that are on my pile that I'm hoping to get to soon after I make my way through the ones I'm currently reading. Obviously, I'm going to be reading the last Harry Potter book, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, this month. I cannot believe that this project is reaching its conclusion. I cannot believe that this is the last book or that it's July. And then I will be buddy reading The Yonalosi Riding Camp for Girls by Anton Disclafani. This is another book set in the 1930s, which I am always on board for. And I think it takes place at like a wealthy girls' riding camp. I absolutely love buddy reading with Elena, so I'm really, really excited to start this book. Hopefully, the fact that she's so on top of things can really whip me into shape and get me reading more. That would be awesome. Then I did not even get started on We the Drowned by Karsten Jensen because I was distracted by other things. But I actually think it might be beneficial because also in July I want to read Under the Black Flag by David Cordingly, which is about the life of pirates. It's a nonfiction book. So if I'm reading a nautical novel and a nonfiction book on pirates, along with reading A Gathering of Shadows, which has lady pirates and pirates in general in it, I think this will be an awesome crossover for my nonfiction pick for the month. And then I am so freaking excited I own this book. I want to read A Gentleman in Moscow by Ingmar Tolles. This is his new book that comes out later this year. I got a message from Patty, formerly of I Smell Books. She used to be a booktuber. She has, unfortunately for all of us other booktubers, stopped doing her channel in favor of her blog. I already miss her channel. But she sent me a message saying that at BEA she picked this book up, which is signed and stamped by the author, and asked me if I would like it to which my response was like a lot of jumping up and down and like fangirl screaming. I don't get that pumped for just anything. This is one that I was going to pre-order the crap out of or beg Steve Donahue to send to me because I just could not wait to get my hands on this one. Not only is it Amor Towles' new novel, and I just talked about how much I love The Rules of Civility, but this one is set in Moscow. Did he write this for me? I think he wrote this for me. So this is about a guy who is basically on house arrest in his hotel room in Moscow. Also set during the 1930s, so it's just, you know, the good things keep on coming. I absolutely cannot wait to read this one. I'm honestly really scared because what if I don't like it as much as The Rules of Civility? I won't think about it. I'm gonna hope for the best. And then two other books that I might pick up this month that I thought might be good for the Booktubeathon, depending on what the challenges are. I don't know when they announce those. The first one is a classic that I've been wanting to pick up at some point this year. It's one of those classic books that I really wanted to get to sometime in 2016. That is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. The other one is also a short read called Mad Miss Mimic by Sarah Henstra. I hauled this one fairly recently. It's about a girl in London in 1872 who is a master mimic, and I think she gets herself involved in some nefarious activity because of that. It sounded so much fun. I am really excited to pick this one up when I end up doing so. So those are all the books I read in June and what I'm planning to read in July. Like I've said a couple times now, we'll see which of the books I'm currently reading will make it into the July wrap-up. Not quite sure what's going to keep my attention. You know the drill. If you have read any of these, want to read any of these, I would love to chat with you about them down in the comment section or on any of my variety of social media accounts, which are linked in the description box below. I hope you're having an absolutely wonderful July so far. I thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.